The emergency klaxons wailed through Sector 7 of the Galactic Trade Station, their shrill cry cutting through the usual hum of 1,000 different species conducting business. Cecil pressed his back against the cold metal wall, his daughter Ursula clutching his hand with the fierce grip only a 7-year-old could muster. "Daddy, what's happening?" Ursula's voice trembled as the station shuddered beneath their feet. "Pirates, sweetheart," Cecil said, his military training kicking in despite having left that life behind 3 years ago. "We need to get to the evacuation pods." They ran through the corridor, Cecil's eyes scanning for threats with the practiced ease of a man who'd spent 15 years as a human special operations officer. Around them, aliens of every conceivable shape and size fled in panic, the crystalline Vexari shattering their protective shells in their haste, the gas-form nebulites dispersing and reforming frantically, the towering Kryn stumbling over their 6 legs. That's when Cecil heard it, a small, chittering cry that cut through the chaos. Mr. Human, please." He stopped, much to Ursula's protest, and turned. There, collapsed against a support beam, was a trocky woman, her forearms cradling her abdomen where green blood seeped through her environmental suit. Beside her stood a tiny trocky child, no more than 4 years old by human standards, her large compound eyes glistening with tears. "Mummy can't walk," the little girl said in broken standard galactic, her translator struggling with her young age. "Please, Mr. Human." Cecil's jaw tightened. The Trochi were an insectoid species, their exoskeletons giving them an appearance that had frightened him when he first arrived at the station. But he'd learned quickly that appearance meant nothing out here among the stars. He'd bought produce from this very Trochi woman last week at her market store. She'd given Ursula an extra sweet fruit, waving away his payment with a kind gesture. "Daddy, the pods, I know, baby." Cecil knelt beside the injured woman. Her breathing was rapid, her mandibles clicking in distress. The wound was bad, something had pierced her carapace during the initial attack. "Ma'am, can you move at all?" "No, ... strength, ... please, ... The Traki woman's hand trembled as she reached toward her daughter. "Save, ... Kira, ... Another explosion rocked the station. Cecil could hear weapons fire getting closer. The pirates were boarding. He knew from experience what species like these did to stations they captured. They took what they wanted and left no witnesses. "Ursula, hold on to my neck, tight as you can." "What are you doing, Daddy?" Cecil didn't answer. Instead, he reached down and, with a grunt of effort, lifted the Trochi woman. She weighed less than he expected, maybe 70 kilos, but she was awkward to carry with her forearms and chitinous structure. He settled her across his shoulders in a fireman's carry, the same way he'd carried wounded comrades through hostile territory on 3 different worlds. "Kira, hold your mummy's hand and stay close to Ursula. Can you do that?" The little Trochi girl nodded frantically, her antennae bobbing. Ursula, without being asked, took Kira's small clawed hand in hers. "Okay, girls, we run. No matter what happens, we run." They moved as fast as Cecil's burden would allow. His leg, the one that had earned him an honorable discharge and a permanent limp, screamed in protest. But he'd endured worse. He'd marched through the toxic swamps of Hellion 3 with a broken rib. He'd carried Lieutenant Torres 15 kilometers through enemy lines with a dislocated shoulder. This was nothing, except it was everything. These weren't soldiers. They were children and a mother. They rounded a corner and came face to face with 3 pirates' Grell mercenaries, their reptilian features twisted in predatory grins. Weapons raised. Well, the lead Grell hissed. A human and ... snacks. Cecil's free hand moved with the speed that had made him legendary in the special operations community. The concealed plasma knife he'd sworn he'd never need again was suddenly in his grip, and before the Grell could fire, Cecil had thrown it with lethal precision. It buried itself in the lead pirate's throat. The other 2, Grell hesitated, that split second of surprise, that prey wasn't supposed to fight back. It was all Cecil needed. He lunged forward, using his body weight and the momentum of the tracky woman on his shoulders to slam into the second Grell, crushing him against the wall. The third raised his weapon, but Ursula Brave, clever Ursula, had grabbed a heavy tool from a nearby maintenance kit and threw it. Striking the pirate's weapon hand, Cecil didn't wait. He grabbed the fallen weapon and fired once, twice. The corridor fell silent except for the wailing klaxons. "Daddy, you said you weren't a soldier anymore," Ursula whispered. "I'm not, baby. I'm a father. That's more important." He adjusted the trocky woman on his shoulders. "Come on, the pods are close." They made it to the evacuation bay with 30 seconds to spare. Cecil strapped the trocky woman into a pod seat, medical foam automatically deploying to stabilize her wounds. Kira climbed in beside her mother, her small hand never leaving the larger one. "Thank ... you ... The tracky woman managed, her translator crackling. "Why? Humans always. Crazy brave." Cecil smiled as he strapped Ursula into the pod next to theirs. "Not brave, ma'am. Just stubborn. We don't leave people behind. It's kind of our thing." As the pods launched, carrying them away from the dying station toward the safety of a nearby Alliance patrol, Cecil watched the 2 trocky through the transparent pod wall. Kira's antennae were pressed against her mother's chest, her body shaking with relief. Ursula tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, your leg is bleeding." Cecil looked down. She was right. He hadn't even felt it must have caught shrapnel during the fight. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just another scar. You're going to have a lot of scars." "Yeah," Cecil said, pulling his daughter close. "But they're worth it. Every single one." Through the pod window, he saw Kira's large compound eyes looking back at him. One small clawed hand pressed against the transparent wall in a gesture of thanks. He raised his own hand in return. That was the thing about humans, Cecil thought. They'd joined the galactic community as the newcomers, the primitives from a backwater world, but they'd brought something with them that seemed to baffle the older, more civilized, racism, irrational, stubborn refusal to accept that someone had to be left behind. The galaxy called it crazy, called it reckless. Humans called it being human, and Cecil wouldn't have it any other way.